Sometimes, people, patience pays off. So Days Gone is an open world survival horror game set in a post-apocalyptic world where zombies or freakers have basically taken over the entire country or possibly the world, and you as a ex-biker survivalist have to survive this world and piece together the clues of your missing wife. It's been a while since I've reviewed a video game, guys. So Days Gone, this is one that I really wanted to finish all the way before I reviewed it. I've had this game for a few weeks now. I bought it day one. I've been playing it over and over and over again, trying to get through the story, trying to explore everything that this game has to offer, because it's a very padded out, well-rounded game, before I give my final thoughts. And I'm finally ready to deliver those. So, as far as the positives of Days Gone, the main thing that I want everybody to understand about this is that this is a game that really requires time. It requires patience. It requires for you to explore it a bit before you can judge whether or not you like it or not. I've read a lot of reviews on this game that to me honestly feel like people only played it for 3 or 4 hours, made their judgments, and dropped their reviews, because this is getting like 6 out of 10s pretty much from everywhere. And while this is not a perfect game, I certainly have major issues with it that I will get into. This game deserves much better than that, because this is a really interesting story, an interesting world, and a really cool gameplay dynamic that they have with this open world survival zombie setup that you really can't fully understand what all this game has to offer until you've dumped about 10 to 15 hours into it. For some, that might be too much, and I understand if you're somebody that likes quick games or you like playing online, you don't like diving into it too much, I get it. This might not be the game for you, but for everybody else that likes long, huge, epic games like the Red Dead Redemption games or Grand Theft Auto style games where you have to spend hours and hours and hours into it, this is a game that will not truly start showing how good it is until at least a third of the way through the story. Before that, and I'll get into it, it does feel a little monotonous. The main character of Deacon St. John, and this is also something that you have to spend some time in the game before you start to realize, is a really interesting and captivating character. It seems a little bit face value at first with what this guy is all about, but by the time you start really diving into his story, you start kind of piecing together some of his past, you start seeing more of his relationships with camps that he has been a part of and left, his best friend Boozer, his wife Sarah that he has basically been estranged from for 2 years trying to survive in this world, and he's all but given up hope that she's dead. This is a really interesting character, and it helps when you get the voice acting and I believe performance acting of Sam Witwer. This is a guy that you've seen, like if you watch the show Being Human. He also does a lot of voice acting for the Clone Wars, or it might even be one of the other Star Wars animated ones. I don't watch them, guys, so go ahead and yell at me in the comment section. The Star Wars animated series that we had for a while, I believe he did Darth Maul. But this is a guy that I've always liked him as an actor, the little bit that I've seen of him. You really feel a lot of emotion from this character, especially in some of these bigger, more emotional moments later on in the story because of his performance. So it's a character that you like diving into. He's got a cool look about him. It's a little bit like a Sons of Anarchy kind of feel because he is an biker gang member. But I like him. I like his attitude. I like his take no shit style. I like where he kind of has that humanity where he kind of longs to be a part of a group, but he's so like a hair trigger when it comes to how to react to certain situations, how to react to murderers and rapists and zombies and everything, that he doesn't quite fit in and he doesn't quite have the ability to take orders. I like all that because not quite to the extent that they take it with his character, but aspects of that personality kind of fits in with my personality a little bit. So it really did feel like an extension of me while I was playing it. And he's a character that I just enjoyed playing this entire story through and kind of mowing down hordes of zombies with. I like the character, and I hope we get to see more of him.
Dig, bro. And I know what kind of man he is. What he's done. He done any worse than you? Ricky? How about me?
You're afraid to be here. You're afraid to be a part of something. We need you here, and that scares the hell out of you.
Now, as far as the gameplay, I thought it was put together really well. It's not the best open world game I've ever played. There's certainly some things that feel a little bit reminiscent of other games, like as far as the mission style, especially like the side mission stuff, like go kill this camp. You know, we've seen like in Far Cry games, you do that all the time. Go destroy that camp and then you can have it as a save point. You know, go find this item. But as far as how the gameplay in this open world reacts, like it works. You're basically on a motorcycle traveling on this derelict version of Oregon, which is gorgeous. It's another huge positive is the visuals, especially the world is just beautiful, from the trees and the woods to the rivers and the caves. Getting ahead of myself, but that is another huge positive. But the gameplay of just exploring this world, finding gas, putting together new weapons, being able to, you know, kind of like Dead Rising where you can fashion things together with barbed wire and spikes and nails, that's in here. The gunplay is really, really good. The bike, as far as the traversal, you have to kind of upgrade your bike a bit before it really starts to show how well the handling is. At first, when you have the shit bike, it's a little difficult. You're like, what the fuck? But all of that put together, you know, being able to explore the open world, which is something that usually annoys me, the gunplay, especially the zombies, as far as how they react to you, how you're able to take on certain ones whenever you get farther into the game and you're actually able to take on entire hordes. Probably my favorite part of the game is awesome, like having a gigantic like 300, 400 group of zombie horde that's just in this one spot, and you have all these like trains or buildings or trees around you, whatever environment you find them in, and you can actually plan it out and set traps and set like attractors, like throwing speakers to make them all move over here, or proximity mines, or later on you get this badass Molotov that just lays waste to at least like 50 or 60 of them. Being able to kind of plan out your attack on a horde and then executing it and either being a badass and taking all 300-400 of them out or dying miserably over and over again, that's a really fun time to have in this game. It's a very well-rounded game with a lot to deliver, whether you like shooting people, driving around, exploring, planning and executing attacks, all that stuff is here, and I think it's all done pretty well. And even like the more realistic side of things, like keeping the gasoline in your tank and keeping your bike like up to maintenance. Like whenever you crash, your maintenance kind of goes down, and when it gets to a certain percent, you can't drive the bike anymore and you have to fix it. In some games like Far Cry 2, for example, things like that get very annoying. This game does a really good job at making it where it's something you have to keep in mind that is a difficulty in there, making sure that you have enough gas to get to point A and then back, making sure that you're not driving into fucking trucks and trees and everything and thinking that you're invincible. But it's easy enough to manage, and there's enough resources out there in this world, there's enough little shortcuts and tricks that you can learn, that it's another more fun aspect of the gameplay to make this world feel a little bit more real. It was not annoying at all. Now, I touched on it in the beginning a little bit, but I also like the story they present. It takes a little while to get going. At first, it just feels like new character in an open world that we've seen before, with zombies that we've seen before that they call freakers, looking for his wife. And for the first 5 to 6 hours of the game, that's pretty much the only main story you have. It's just trying to piece together memories and trying to get to a point where your character will either forget about his wife and move on to other characters, or maybe find something that proves that she's alive. But once you get past that, once you start opening up different camps that you become kind of allies with, and kind of introducing characters that Deacon has a past with that you have to piece together with certain missions, and seeing how that kind of transcends with, like, Iron Mike is a camp owner that you have a lot of past with. There's this guy Schizo who you're kind of at odds with a little bit. There's these guys called Rippers who are basically, like, in the Walking Dead terms, they're like the Whisperers, they're the freaks, the ones that kind of almost idolize these freakers and these zombies, and they're sadomasochistic and shit. Like, there's a lot of cool storylines that open up later on in the game that really flesh out this character and keep the gameplay and the game itself fresh, because there's so many different things going on at once that it's not just you searching for somebody the entire game, which it felt like for a while. There's so many different things about how are we going to take on these Rippers, how are we going to get rid of this threat, how am I going to be allies with this camp while being allies with this camp, and it just makes it a really interesting game to keep playing. And finally, I do like the different versions of enemies we get in this. Not just the human enemies, because those do have a couple of different aspects to them, from like the Rippers to the Marauders, who are just like cannibals, versus sadomasochistic psychopaths. But you get the zombies, who they call freakers, and you get like swarmers, who are kind of like the drones. You get bleachers, who are a little bit more, they're white, which is why they call them bleachers. Their skin has been like pigmented, but they're a little bit heavier. You have like breakers, who are like roided out fuckers. You have runners, which are wolves that have been infected and they can actually run as fast as your motorcycle. You have ragers, which are bears that have been infected and they have barbed wire wrapped around them and shit. There's a lot of different enemies where you encounter them and you have to change your gameplay style. When you first encounter them, it's like, holy shit, this is like a boss battle, kind of trying to figure out how to do something different to take down this enemy. What is he weak to? What is he pretty much impervious to? And then throughout the game, whenever these just start to become more recurring enemies that you find, where like you'll walk into a horde and there's a bunch of swarmers, there's a couple bleachers, there might be a rager, there might be a reacher, and it just keeps the gameplay fresh. And I liked how they had the different versions of these characters, not just stock zombies. There's different forms of this infection. It was cool. It was unique enough. I liked it. Now moving on to the negatives, and this game does have some pretty big negatives, I will be honest. One of them, while I do think it does, I want people to be able to give this game enough time to get to the better aspects of the game. It is a bit of a negative that they would take so long in their story and in their gameplay to get to those points. It's a very slow burn for like the first 4 to 6 hours, and this is not the type of game that should be that, so that is kind of a negative. You could have put more and front-loaded this game a little bit more with some cooler stuff to really capture people's attention, and then you can surprise them with some of how this game expands itself. Another huge annoyance for me is the way that you kind of the way that you sign into certain missions. So like we've all played open world games like Grand Theft Auto, where you go and you talk to somebody, they give you a mission, you go do the mission and you win. Well, this game takes the approach that's like that, but you'll get a call on the radio, you'll be driving around, hey, it's such and such, come to this camp, I have a job for you. Then you have to stop what you're doing and drive all the way to that camp just to talk to them to get the mission. Then you have to go do the mission. Then you have to come back and tell them that you did the mission. And for open world game, that's very fucking annoying. Even though you get to a point later on where you can fast travel and you can find gas enough where it's not going to be as annoying, it's still very aggravating when you have a radio, you have a communication device, and the gameplay or the game creators didn't think that it would have been seamless enough to just say, hey, I have a job for you, go kill this bitch. And then there's your mission. And then you can go do it and, hey, I killed her. Or, hey, go save this person because they're at this camp. Okay, cool. And then you go do it. Having to go and talk to somebody and then turn the mission in constantly gets annoying, especially when you were just at this camp this person was at and you drive a good 10 minutes away and then they call you, hey, I got a job for you. Motherfucker, why didn't you tell me when I was standing next to you? But the last negative that I have, which is the most disappointing, especially since this game was delayed numerous times, like almost to an infamous level. Like this was like an infamously delayed game constantly to where people didn't even know if it was actually gonna hit the shelves. There's still some gameplay issues as far as technical problems that have been left in this game. And this game is updated at least 7 times since I bought it. So I think they're working on it, but for as much as you delayed it, this should have been handled. It's not something that breaks the game. It's not something that happens all the time, but when it does happen, you're like, what the fuck? There's graphic pop-ins where details on certain characters will be kind of muddied and then they'll suddenly pop in mid-cut scene. There was one time that I was driving and the road disappeared and it was just open map underneath me and I was just kind of driving on a cloud. There's times when the gameplay will glitch regarding hordes where there was a horde down in this little pit, and usually if you shoot one zombie, make a noise, if one sees you, the whole horde comes at you. For whatever reason, this horde, I would shoot at them and only some of them would come. So I thought maybe it was just maybe an easier difficulty horde or something, and I spent like half an hour shooting this horde, getting it down to nothing to where I could get the in-game achievement for this horde, and I thought that I killed the last one and there was none more around. Then I walked like 5 foot that way and was looking, and I turned back around and the whole horde regenerated. That was annoying. There's times where the frame rate will drop a little bit when you're driving once in a great while, or if you're going into a camp, it'll kind of stutter a little bit. Again, this is not something that happens constantly. This is not something that I'm like, it really screws the game up, but it just happens once every couple hours and it's annoying. So frame rate issues and technical glitches do exist in Days Gone, and that's a disappointment. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed this game. I hope that it gets a sequel. I don't know how well it's selling. I just know that review-wise, it's not getting particularly positive reviews. Like I said, like 6, 7 out of 10 tops, which is middle of the road at best. It's a game that I had a lot of fun with. I found myself addicted to, where I would play it constantly just to even take on a horde or to get to the next piece of this story with the Rippers, or, you know, see what's going on with this wife storyline or some other characters that he has. It's a game that once it engaged me, it had me. But it did take a while to get there. It does have a little bit of patience required. It is a little bit demanding with, you know, how much you have to do to complete missions sometimes, that it's going to annoy people. So it is a game that is going to get on some people's nerves for those reasons, but I feel like there is enough that this game does really well with the characters, with the story, with the gameplay, that it is worth checking out, and it is worth diving into for, you know, the first 10 to 12 hours to get to the meatier side of the game.
We have to look out for each other. It's all we got.
You could have saved a few lives.
There was no hope, there was no time, there was no room, okay? We'd already turned on each other by the time the hordes arrived.
Hope you're right about your old lady, Deke. You gotta ask yourself, what does it matter if everyone else is dead?
So for an open world survival horror game, Days Gone has a lot going for it. There are some annoyances here and there. There is some technical glitches. It does require some patience, but there is a lot that is worth trekking through some of those difficulties to get to. And this is a game that should be in your game console right now. So check this thing out, and you might even pull an all-nighter. So what did you guys think of Days Gone? Did you enjoy this? Did it annoy you? Did you get past the first 10 to 12 hours and really start getting into the meat of the game? Did you give up at some point? Have you had more or less technical glitches as me? Do you enjoy taking on hordes? Have you even got that far yet? How do you like the story, the character of Deacon St. John? Do you want a sequel, or do you feel like this was a swing and a miss and you don't want to see any more Days Gone? So let me know down in the comment section below, guys. Please check the video description below as well for social media links like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt, like for Cody Leach merchandise like t-shirts, mesh bags, coffee mugs, all that cool stuff, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow, and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only. So check all that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos and past game reviews, you can check that out by clicking right over here.